So I mean, thank you, Jonathan and Robin. I know you're not here, but you know, thank you both for inviting me to this. This is really cool. I like what you've put together here. I just really think that in times like this, when things are just so crazy, like community is really the most important thing, and getting people together, especially people who are doing a lot of the same things. You know, we're all interested in productized services, or we've been building productized services. So I think this is really awesome. And as you know, I've been, you know, talking about productized services for a while now. This talk today is called 3 Mindset Shifts. One of the things that I've learned over the years of running multiple businesses is that really, no matter what kind of business it is that you're working on, being an entrepreneur, being a founder, going from one thing to the next, it's really about managing your own mindset and like strategically focusing on some things and not focusing on others, and being very strategic about all of the decisions. Some are very big decisions, some are very small day to day, but it all comes into mindset. And the more that you can be aware of these things and kind of step back, you know, the more progress that you're going to make from year to year. That's what I found. And so thinking about that, I've actually just become more and more interested in how can I get better at managing my own mindset. So today I wanted to talk about 3 interesting shifts or changes in thinking or changes in habits that you should think about when you're, this applies if you're starting up a brand new productized service business, but also if you've been at this a little while and you're kind of looking to grow to the next level. I think all of this can apply pretty well. I wanted to, you know, get a sense of who's in here. So I don't know if we want to, like, you know, throw it into the chat, or Jonathan, or, you know, maybe you can help me out here, but I'm just curious, like, how many people here are in client services? So a freelancer, a consultant, maybe an agency, or an existing productized service. Is that most of the folks here?
So if anyone can drop in something in the chat, like a hand raised.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. Yeah, hey, Mickey, good to see you here. Awesome. And so are there any folks who are like not in client services? So maybe you're doing some other type of product business, software, physical products, e-commerce, communities, anything like that? Probably not many in that camp, I would think. And then how about, what's the mix of people who are fully self-employed versus full-time employed? Or, you know, maybe you're full-time and you're thinking about going out on your own, or maybe in these new circumstances, everybody is home, and so now all of a sudden you're thinking about doing something new. Is there anybody in that camp? Awesome. Yeah, like one of the questions I get a lot is like, you know, can I do a productized service if I have not done generalized freelancing before? And I always say yes. It's always interesting because it's like I feel like in some ways those folks are at a little bit of an advantage because they don't need to break out of some of the traditional habits or ways of freelancing by the hour. So you can be a little bit more strategic right out of the gate. I really like that. Cool. So let's get into the 3 mindset shifts. I want to talk about, I want to just give you the 3 right off the bat, so you know sort of like where this is headed and why these things matter. The first one, I want to talk about a way to make sales a lot easier than the traditional way of selling services to customers and clients. The second mindset shift that we'll go over is how to make your service more predictable so that you can actually be proactive about growing it rather than, you know, being reactive. And finally, I'm going to talk about how you can clone yourself. We'll see what that's all about. So I am Brian Casel, and I'll give you a quick history of what I've been working on here. So the first business that really sort of, actually, let me go back here for a second. So I started, I've been self-employed for about 12 years now. I've been in that time, I consider myself a professional designer, designing things for the web. I've been at a professional level for 15 years. I used to work for a web agency. In 2008, I went out on my own to become basically a freelance web designer. And I did the typical freelance thing for a couple of years there, working project to project, creating websites for all sorts of different clients and slowly raising my rates over time. Most of that time I was on my own, but I sort of grew into like a virtual agency a little bit during those years. But the first thing that really clicked for me was a business called Restaurant Engine. And that's where I built essentially a website builder, like a Squarespace for the restaurant industry. It was all built on top of WordPress, but I spent a lot of time and money and effort into creating this like automated system. It's like a software, like a SaaS product for restaurants to come and build their own website on this platform. And what I quickly learned was restaurant owners don't want to come and do it themselves. They're too busy. They don't know how. No matter how easy I thought I was making it for them, what they really wanted was done for you. They want that support. They don't want to be able to design their own website. They want a website done, and they want to get on with running their business. And so that clicked pretty early on. I realized like, well, when I set up these websites for the restaurant, they're much more likely to pay and to be happy with the service and to stick with the service long term. And then, that quickly morphed into a productized service. It was kind of like a software plus service model, which I really loved the pairing of those things. So I started that back in 2011 and grew that methodically over a couple of years, built a team to handle everything from the sales to the support and the setups and the ongoing maintenance and service aspects. So in 2015, I sold that business. That was a 6-figure exit. And right around that time is when I started Audience Ops in 2015. I went right back to the model that I knew best at that point, and I really cut my teeth on Restaurant Engine. So then I went into my next business really all about process and building a team, and I could move much more rapidly. And so that's what happened with Audience Ops. It's a productized, done for you content service where we power blog content. We also then later on we added similar services for done for you podcast content and customer case study content for clients. So today that I'm still running that business. It's a team of about 25 people working remotely. It's been, my main self-funding source for everything that I've been doing these past few years. And for the last 2 or 3 years of running this business, I have been spending less than an hour or two each week doing anything in this business. Most of the work, most of the day-to-day things that are happening, the team is just handling that with our processes. We've got a really, really in-depth customer onboarding process. We have a salesperson. We've got the writing team, the editors, the assistants. It's all just working really well. And actually, our head of operations just had a kid last week, and so now these 2 weeks right now she's taking off, and actually the business is still running without me, even without her. So the lower level management team is really dialed in as well. And I've been really happy with that team because they've been on the team on Audience Ops in a part-time contractor, but still everyday dedicated roles for many of them over 3 or 4 years, and I really love that metric more than anything else. So it's been a really kind of like a win-win-win situation there. In 2018, with Audience Ops kind of running on its own, and I'm very much freed up at this point, it's paying my bills, running without me. I spent all of 2018 taking that time and reinvesting back into my own skills. I've been a front-end web designer, and I wanted to learn how to build my own web apps, software apps. And so I learned Ruby on Rails and spent about a year going through courses and building practice projects. And then in 2019 is when I broke ground on building Process Kit. And so Process Kit is a process-driven project management software. We started adding customers around the middle of last year, and we've been, slowly growing that customer base since. We're continuing to grow the features. it's come a long way since last year. I've got another developer working with me now. I'm still spending a lot of time working on this product and this business, but what Process Kit is that it's the place to manage all of your processes, your SOPs, but it's also the place to actually run those processes on your repeatable projects. What I found is that with most tools, if it's a general project management tool like a Basecamp, Asana, or Notion, you can manage a lot of tasks in there, maybe have some templates here and there, but it's not a true process-oriented tool. And then there are some process stuff out there, but that's usually in a silo, or people are documenting their SOPs in Google Docs. And so Process Kit is kind of where we bring those together, where you can build automations into your processes that automatically adapt to your projects. So that's kind of the vision and what's happening with Process Kit. As you can imagine, it's very much designed with productized services in mind. A lot of our clients, our customers on Process Kit are productized services. And I've been adding a productized service on top of Process Kit now, where we do an implementation of your processes. We audit and improve them. We set up your Zapps and kind of hook it all together with your Process Kit account. Lastly, productizescale.com. That's my website. I've been creating content over there since 2013. And just writing about lessons that I'm learning along the way while I'm building all these businesses. And through the years, I've gone in and out of publishing more content, sometimes taking a backseat. But in 2014 is when I launched the Productize course, and it's a private community for folks who are building productized services. Some are just starting out, some are well established, and it's kind of like a private place to give and get feedback. We match people into their own mastermind groups. I'm in there, and that's where we do a lot of like the picking of each other's brains, presenting ideas and things like that. I also host the Productize podcast. I've done about 73 interviews over there, and just recorded a whole new lineup of interviews that we'll start publishing, I think next week, every week, probably for the rest of the year here. So that's a really fun one, where I get to talk to other productized service business owners. Okay, so let's get into these mindset shifts. So the first one is talking about a way to make sales a lot easier. So how do we do that? Make the sale a yes or no proposition. This is the concept that I really want to get across here. Because if you think about the typical flow when you're selling services, whether you're a freelancer, a consultant, an agency, there's some combination of like a discovery call and maybe an in-person meeting, and you want to figure out what their needs are, what they want, what they're asking for. You come back and you write a big, long custom proposal. You spec out everything that's in there. You create some kind of hours estimate, and you're hashing out scope, and then you present that, and then they come back and they try to negotiate. Well, if we cut off this part of the project, how many hours is that going to be? And you're giving me these hour estimates, but are you really going to deliver what I ultimately need? It's just a painful process for both sides of the table, right? I mean, you're spending all this time creating custom proposals. The client is trying to do all this mental calculations to figure out, okay, how much am I going to end up paying at the end of the day? And am I actually going to get my problem solved or not? Even if the project moves forward, then you're dealing with scope creep and all these different kinds of things. So to kind of break out of this, that typical routine of selling services, try this instead, right? Here's like an exercise that I really like to recommend people do. Dream up your dream client. Like, just make believe that the perfect type of client that for you to work with just showed up at your doorstep, sent you an email, gave you a call, whatever, and says, I have this business problem and I don't really know what I need. Budget is not really an issue. But I've heard that you sort of know how to deal with these things. So what do you, so the client says to you, like, what do you think I should do? What would you recommend I do? Or maybe put another way, like, what would you do for yourself if you had the same business need in your own business? What are all the things that you would need to do to solve that problem? it's completely up to you to call the shots. Like, okay, it's a website design. Okay, well, you're going to need to do a style guide, and you're going to need to write the copy in this way, and you're going to need to use these tools, and you should probably have a lead magnet and some content and this and that. And so you can put together all the best possible solution that you can come up with to solve that problem. It's your call, right? And just going through that exercise, it starts to put you in the mindset of creating a value proposition that is aimed at solving a very specific problem. And so what this ultimately ends up leading to is presenting that to customers and giving them a yes or no proposition. So you've put together your ideal package, your solution to a very specific problem, and it's up to the customer to say, yes, that is for me. You've read my mind. It sounds like you really know this problem inside and out. And I mean, you're speaking my language. I'm resonating with everything that you've put together here. That this is an easy yes, or it's a no. Like, okay, I'm not really understanding what you're getting at. Is this for me or not? I don't really know. It doesn't sound like it. So in that case, then the customer is not necessarily a fit. So what this does is it makes it easier for both sides of the table, right? For you can create a value proposition, a sales proposition that is easy to sell again and again, as long as you've identified an ideal customer and there's a market there and you've gone through the validation. That's a whole other story, but it makes it easier. You don't need to go through the whole custom proposal process. You can offer set packages. You can tailor your pricing around this. But most importantly, it's easier for your client. For them, it's just a yes or no, buying a product like they would buy a product off of Amazon. And the more targeted, the more specific you can get in terms of who you're selling to, the higher likelihood that they will actually resonate with what you're putting across to them. So let's get into mindset shift number 2. The challenge most of us face when you're dealing in client services is that your business is just unpredictable. Maybe you're relying on referrals, which may or may not come. Maybe things are going fine, and then there's a global pandemic, and then all of a sudden the email stops and the phone calls stop. Every project is completely different. There's completely different scopes, different budgets, different people involved. And it just makes it incredibly hard to grow and scale because you're constantly putting out fires or figuring out what's needed for that next custom project, right? So the mindset shift to think about here is to default to predictable. And what I mean here is to let this principle guide every key decision that you're going to make as you design your productized service business. So here's an example. What do you think is better? Option A, or scenario A, where in a year you get 4 projects and they're worth $50,000 each, but they're completely different scopes. Or option B, where you're doing 20 projects, but they're worth $10,000 each, but pretty similar scopes, right? And end of the year, you're going to end up with the same level of revenue total. But I like option B a little bit better because, those 4 high revenue projects, the 50,000 projects, those are nice for bringing those big spikes of revenue in the door, but they come with a lot of baggage, right? Because every time you sign one of those big custom projects, you have to scramble to figure out, do I have the right staff to fulfill this? What if you don't like working with this client? Then you still kind of have to, and you've got to because you have a contract and all this. It's a lot more work to do to custom tailor projects like this, and it's more dependent on you or your key people to deliver the ultimate custom solution for what they need. So I like these smaller kind of mid or maybe even mid-sized projects that are highly predictable, and I like these for a few reasons. Number one, they're much easier to scale in the sales process. If you're doing 20 projects in a year, or 50 or 100 projects in a year that are the similar scope, again, getting back to that like yes or no value proposition, it's much easier to repeat that sale over and over again, and kind of ditching the custom proposals process. It's easier to create a delivery process that doesn't require you, right? So when again, like when every project is smaller, that means it's a little bit more predictable, so you can start to be strategic about the roles that you fill and building those processes. It's easier to hire people to run those roles in the process, because they're smaller, they're more specific. And you're also not dependent on one or two big whale clients, right? Because if one of those goes away, half your business or a quarter of your business, goes away in the year, and that can be kind of scary to deal with. So, this might seem like it's easier said than done, right? Well, that's where this mindset shift comes in. Every strategic decision that you make, especially early on when you're figuring out what that value proposition is, or who you're going to sell to, who that ideal customer is, figuring out the right solution to offer, make this one of the key criteria is make the service as predictable as possible. All right, so this final mindset shift that I want to go over today is, wouldn't it be great if there were more of you, right? I mean, your clients probably really trust you personally, right? You're the one with the talent, the unique skill, the experience, the relationship with the client, right? So you might be wondering, I get this question all the time, like, how can I actually find more people who can do what I do, and even if I do, then will the clients even really trust them? Because I have this unique relationship with my clients, right? And so you feel like limited because there's only one of you, and that's like your ceiling, preventing you from scaling up and growing your team and turning it into an actual growable business, right? Well, you can't clone yourself. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So you shouldn't even try, right? But then how do companies ever actually grow? Because it happens all the time, right? There are plenty of companies in the world who have gone from one person or a small shop, and they've grown into 5 or 10, 20, 50 people or more. So the thing to keep in mind here is that your clients might like you personally. They might believe what you say and believe that you're reliable. That's all nice, but that's not why they're hiring you. They're hiring you because they have a business problem, and you have proven your ability to solve it. So there's no reason why they wouldn't trust you to design your company to solve that same problem. So your company can still solve their problem in a trustworthy way, even if you're not the one doing the day-to-day work. So your customers, and I've seen this firsthand, where I like Audience Ops, I've been selling that service since day one, and I've never written one single article for any clients of Audience Ops. But the customers trust in your ability to build the systems, the processes, your ability to recruit the right type of talent, train the team, build in quality assurance, and all those steps, because they trust that you know their problem inside and out, and you know what's involved in getting it done right and getting it done reliably and predictably. So your unique talent has to transition out of doing the work yourself and being the talented technician on the ground into you need to move towards being the one who's designing the systems for others to do the work. And what you'll find is that this will actually force you to proactively make your service more predictable, right? If you use this as your constraint, right? This was something that I said to myself that literally the day I decided to start Audience Ops as a business. I was like, the only way that I'm going to do this business is if it does not require me to be the writer. I don't want to. I was a freelance web designer before that. Or no, I was doing Restaurant Engine before that, but I've been a designer, a web designer. I've never been a professional writer for hire, right? But I knew this problem inside and out because I dealt with it in my previous business. So I started Audience Ops on the premise that I know how to hire writers. I know how to build systems and processes to deliver quality writing. and I know how to build a team and a system for that. I don't want to start this business for me to be the writer. That's not to say that every productized service has to begin that way. I was in a position, I had recently sold my business, so I had a little bit of runway, but it's just again, it's a mindset shift to think about. That should be the primary goal is for you to build a business, build an operation that can deliver the same or better outcome. And that's the other thing that you'll find as well. Like, as talented as all of us are in whatever skill set that we have, when you're focused on hiring other people and either training them or being the one recruiting key talent, and having your business deliver that in a very predictable way, what you'll end up with is a final product that's much better than you can do yourself or any single person can do themselves. I mean, if I think about audience ops, again, even the individual writers that we hire, they're amazing, but we also hire dedicated copy editors, and we also hire amazingly talented content managers and virtual assistants, and everyone has their specific role in the process. And so every single article that comes out is a level of quality above what I can do myself or any one of them can do on their own, because they're all kind of following our processes. So, and then once again, it all kind of folds back into that first one, making it a yes or no value proposition. As you're building the service to be more predictable, as you're putting the people in place to fulfill their very specific roles, it makes it easier and easier to dial in that value proposition, that the sales conversations, the copy on your website, it all becomes even more specific and resonates even more with the exact right type of customer. So I don't know if I'm early or late here, but I'm at this point, I'll be happy to kind of open it up for questions, and I'll hang out here, as long as I can.
Awesome, thanks, Brian. I think if you go in the chat, we've got one from Armin, and feel free to. I'm going to unmute you, Armin, in case you want to jump in here. But Armin says, "Are you there, Armin?"
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. Do you want to say this out loud?
Hey, Armin.
Hi, Brian. So are you aware of any kind of traditional businesses that kind of extended their service more towards productized services, like, for example, management consultancy firm or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we see examples of this all the time. I'm personally not super experienced in management consulting firms, obviously, but everything has the process. I mean, number one is the thing to think. Another question that I get all the time is, how can I productize or standardize a service that is highly customized? Whether if it's management consulting and every engagement is a little bit different, you can still, even if the content of the service is different or unique or customized to every customer, you can still productize and standardize the process by which you do it. So like every customer goes through an onboarding process. Maybe there's always a series of meetings that happen. And then you can start to hire people who can take over for you in that role. But I'm always fascinated with like these offline, out in the world businesses that operate essentially like productized services. I mean, one example that's on the top of my mind, I just hired, I don't know if anybody here, those of you who have houses and yards with grass and everything, the service, what's it called? True Green. I just hired, so at my house here, we've got this big front yard and backyard, and I've always been frustrated with like, weeds and crabgrass and all that kind of stuff. So this service just shows up at the house and doesn't do the cutting, but they do like the fertilizer and the pre-emergent and the seeding and all that kind of stuff. And they come like every 6 weeks. So they just productized and they're nationwide. They set up a system. I signed up online. I didn't even talk to anybody. And all of a sudden, once every 6 weeks, somebody comes to my house and puts the seed down, and all I need to deal with, me or someone I hired, will do the cutting. So they've taken like the most painful part of lawn care, and they've built a nationwide service team with impeccable processes and systems. It's pretty incredible. Like the whole buying process was like through the website, and then all of a sudden a True Green truck is just showing up at my house, every couple of weeks. So that one kind of came to mind right away. Yeah, I mean,
So
I see that. Yeah.
would you put emphasis on this kind of, like usually any productized service would give you a kind of a finished product, or at the end you have something, right? You have you receive a piece of content or something like that. The consulting kind of setting, it's a little bit more tricky. Would you agree with that? Or like how to put more emphasis maybe on a finished product, maybe have a kind of monitoring report or something like that? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of gets into like whether you should do a one-time project versus a recurring service.
Exactly.
And there are a ton of benefits to having the recurring subscription service, right? It's recurring revenue, and that can grow over time, but it comes with a lot of challenges too. I mean, dealing with churn, right? And customer retention and keeping people subscribed. You have to deliver value that is repeatable. The pitfall that I see people make a lot is they're delivering what is really a one-time need and a one-time solution, but they want that recurring revenue service. So they try to fit it into this recurring revenue box, and it just doesn't work. And then they see customers cancel within 3 months. So if you're doing a recurring service like management consulting, it can be every customer is entitled to a monthly deliverable. So like you say, it could be a monthly report. The thing to understand is what is it that your customers actually need, or what is the driver that gets them to hire you in the first place? Is it strategic? So maybe they need guidance on some strategy throughout the year. So every month or every quarter, you're checking in with them and you're going over strategic ideas, maybe reviewing what happened and helping them plan for the upcoming quarter. That could be one thing. Another thing could be analyzing data, analyzing analytics, and delivering a report and giving them some customized analysis on that. And again, every report might be the numbers in the report might be different, but the way that you prepare them, the process by which you do that, the process by which you present it, that can all follow a process.
Thanks.
We've got another question from Igor. Igor, I've unmuted you if you want to ask it yourself.
I mean, do you think there is some limit for team size to still be manageable by founder or a general manager? Yeah, that's the question.
That's a good question. Thank you, Igor. The short answer is there is no limit. The longer answer is it's sort of up to you. Some people have a goal of keeping the team fairly small. I know plenty of people who just want to do what's sort of known as like productized consulting. Maybe it's just them and like an assistant, and they still want to do a lot of the work, but in a much more predictable, repeatable way. Others are happy to keep their team in the 5 to 10 person range. Then you see productized services that have grown to 200, 300 plus employees. It can happen any way. And what I've seen happen is there are different like tiers of team size and different needs and requirements that happen. So like in the early days of Audience Ops, I think I started with like 2 or 3 people besides myself. And we had some very rough processes. We sort of built them on the fly as we were getting it up and running. And then within the first year that grew to a team of, 7 or 8 people. So we started improving the processes. And then when we got past 12 people, we had to do a big overhaul of how we onboard customers. And then at one point in there, we went from having 1 account manager to 3 3 account managers and splitting it up. And then that added a layer of process to like split things between different members of the team. Then as things grew a little bit further, 15 to 20 people, we needed a higher level manager, what we call like a team manager. So I had some managers earlier, and writers and assistants and copy editors, but all of their like questions that like, oh, how do I deal with this customer issue, or this process broke down over here, all that stuff was going to me for a while. And then we put the team manager in place, where we kind of promoted one of our managers into this team manager role. So then all of those internal questions go to her, and then she only escalates up things that have really went haywire. That stuff comes to my inbox. But those things are few and far between these days. For a while, there were more of them, and over time we've dealt with them, and we've reworked the process to make sure that these things are improved over time. And that's why today, it's less than an hour a week for me. So it just really depends. And then, I talk to people who build teams of hundreds of employees, and then it's really just about breaking up those management structures. And it's just sort of up to you in terms of how large you want to grow it.
Yeah, thank you for answering.
Thanks, Brian. I've got a question myself. I thought it was really interesting how you talked about how the kind of the holy grail with productized services a lot of the time is trying to identify what are the medium-sized projects as opposed to these super high tier ones. But I'm interested, it made me think of a concept I think I heard on a podcast where they talk about the 10 true clients, 100 customers, and then 1,000 true fans.
Yep.
And the idea that you could, those are different models you can go after. You can either do the high touch points, 10 people, or you can have a community of thousands of people that, maybe they have access to you. They're able to ask questions on a Slack group, or you're providing content to them. Do you feel like there's a place for a bit of a hybrid model? And it feels to me like you are doing a little bit of a hybrid, because you do have a membership community, you do have a course, but at the same time, it looks as though what you've done is you've done it step by step, as opposed to trying to do it all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I do have multiple businesses, if you will, a kind of a portfolio. So there's Productize, which is a course plus community. Process Kit is a software product, and Audience Ops is the Productized service. Technically, I really think of them as very separate. I actually have separate people working on each one. So in that sense, it's separate. So yeah, to the like the one true, I forgot what I know the podcast you're talking about. It was like one true customer or 10, 10 raving fans, something like that. It is like, as you go through that spectrum, the fewer customers that you have, obviously the higher revenue you're charging to earn an income. I like the middle. I like the middle area better, because as you get into needing hundreds of customers, so if you're selling a service that's only $200, $300, $500 a month, that can do really well. But and I have nothing against that model. It's amazing, but it just takes a little bit more time to grow it to a viable level of revenue to replace whatever you're doing before, whether you're coming from a full-time job or you're trying to replace general freelance consulting. If you go to something slightly upmarket, more like a couple $1,000s in lifetime value, or a recurring service where it's 1,000 or more per month, you don't need as many customers to grow recurring revenue much faster. I mean, to give you an example, Audience Ops went from 0 to, I'm trying to remember the milestones. I mean, within the first 30 or 60 days, it was past 5,000 a month in MRR. Within the first year, it was well over 30,000. Actually, the first year it was more than that. But you don't need that many customers to make it a high growth recurring service. That's why I like that middle ground, because it's not so big that every client needs a completely customized solution. So they're small enough to be repeatable, but it's still high enough to charge a good amount.
Thanks. Yeah, I do find it tricky though. Like when you have these big opportunities and these big, who have these big budgets, and you're like, oh, I could do this, but it's going to be a lot of work, and it's not quite the problem I'm focusing on.
Yeah, and I mean, I see this happen a lot where companies can use a productized service offer to be sort of like the top of funnel or the initial product that a customer buys, and then that can upsell into a more customized, higher cost, higher revenue kind of product service. And that can be totally fine, especially if it's a customer who you really like working with, and you have team members that you can assign to doing the larger project. That hybrid model is perfectly fine, especially if you're in like a transition phase. If like your goal over the next year is to move away from the custom stuff and into more of a productized service model, I like pairing those. Like for example, with like web design, a common model is to do like a paid discovery, where a client will hire you and your team to do an audit, maybe make some recommendations, and they're paying for the service for you to like come up with some basic wireframes and a game plan, and then if they want to move forward, that would be a much larger project. So
awesome, thanks. If anybody else has any questions, please do feel to drop them in the chat, or unmute yourselves. I'm curious, Brian, what's next on the horizon for you? And
well, right now I'm sort of balancing working on Process Kit a lot every day. So me and the developer are pushing out new features. I'm onboarding customers and doing the process service that's paired with that. I haven't really promoted that too much, but it's something that I've been doing for a few customers. Then the other thing is Productize and Scale. So I just launched a redesign of that site. The Productize podcast is coming back. I've been doing interviews, and those will start publishing next week. So I'm really excited about that. I've got some new video content and blog content coming on the Productize site. So I'm doing the videos, and then I'm also working with one of the writers from the Audience Ops team, kind of collaborating with me to develop a lot more blog content for that site. Because again, I think this year is really all about building community, and Productize is that thing. Folks like this. I just want to connect with more people and connect more folks like this together. And one of the things that has been a hit in Productize for a while is after somebody becomes a member, we match them into a mastermind group with other members, and so that they can go off and make progress on their own. And so I'm also going to bring in one of the team members from Audience Ops is going to sort of join me in the Productize community to be one of these accountability coaches, and to kind of follow up with people as well. So
awesome. It's really great. Speaking of community, I can see that Gabriel joined him. Gabriel runs community for SaaS Talk, which is a SaaS conference. So he's definitely,
awesome.
Yeah, he's a good person to get to know. We've also got Marieke, who is one of the leaders of Startup Grind in Berlin. I believe she has a video content production company. So yeah, quite a diverse bunch here.
Sweet.
Yeah. There we go. He's giving a wave. So if no one has any further questions, I suppose, Brian, what's the best way for people to kind of follow up with you? Obviously, there's a Slack group, but do you want to tell people where they can sign up for a newsletter? Or?
Yeah, so productizescale.com is the best place to get on my newsletter. If you haven't seen it before, I have a free video crash course on productized services. It's 4 videos that goes into hiring and scaling and breaking away from custom proposals and kind of the stuff that a little bit more on the stuff that I was talking about here. But yeah, once you get on my newsletter, you can reply to any of my emails and ask questions that way. And I'm answering those on YouTube this year. I am CastJam on Twitter, so that's where I kind of rant and waste a lot of time during the day. So that's a good place to reach me as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks everyone.